Hello, and welcome to another tropical update from Cayman Hurricane Center. I'm Adam. Uh, we have had a lot, we currently have a lot, and there's plenty more to come. And we'll get right onto it. But just first, before I do, I would like to apologize. We were planning on doing a live event yesterday, the day before. However, we did have some technical issues, and because of such, it ended up having to be scrapped and just sticking to the updates for the time being. But we seem to be more or less back on track. So let's get right onto it. So, Hurricane Ophelia. Hurricane Ophelia was a very unique historic event. Again, this hurricane, as mentioned in the previous update, was a strengthening hurricane near the Azores, or nearing the Azores, and was expected to head towards the UK. Hurricane Ophelia quickly ramped up to a major hurricane, the matter of fact, the sixth major hurricane of the Atlantic Basin. Now, this is fairly significant because if we do get one more major hurricane, this ties us at the overall record for major hurricane. And shall we receive another major hurricane, we will be breaking the all-time record. The other thing is that this was the strongest hurricane that far north and east in the Atlantic, and it was in a unique position to allow it to strengthen to as such, and then take its way towards the UK. And it's a very unique situation. As such, there is a little bit of question whether or not this system did fully transition into post-tropical or extratropical by the time it made landfall. Again, there's still some argument whether it was still a warm core system or not. Either way, system made landfall in the UK, producing hurricane force winds and even as strong as up to Category 3 intensity across portions of Ireland and portions of Scotland. Of course, pretty much most of the United Kingdom has indeed received, a good portion of the system. Here you see on the satellite imagery the loop of Ophelia as it made its way across. Just wanting to point out here in this shot here, just to give you an idea of how expansive this wind field was. We're talking about generally wind field that expands out to as far as pretty much this whole entire area. Now, just to give you the perspectives on what is what, for those who don't know or is not as highly geography literate, but here is the United Kingdom. We have England, we have Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland. We also have France, located here, Spain and Portugal here, the Mediterranean Sea here. We have the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, up through here. So again, we're talking about very far northeastern Atlantic Ocean, again, well north of Africa. And so as the system continued to move northeastwards up to the northeast Atlantic, made its way across, it has caused quite a bit of damage across the UK. Quite a few people without power, and sadly, this has indeed caused deaths directly in the United Kingdom. Indirectly, it has also caused quite a few deaths with a continuing wildfire that's occurring in, I believe, Portugal, and the strong winds from Ophelia has exacerbated that situation, and as a result of that, had killed quite a few people there. But across the UK, some seriously bad stuff that has occurred. And also, I do apologize. I should have mentioned this at the start of the video. I'm also here in this update here with my trusted colleague and technical supervisor, David. David, welcome. Can we just have a quick little discussion here about what we've seen over the past couple of days with Ophelia and the effects that it has caused over the UK and some of the issues that had taken place? Welcome, David.
Good to be here, Adam, and Ophelia has now entered the history books. It's been a very testing time for the National Hurricane Centre, the Irish and UK Met officers. I think this is going to be one system that will be talked about, and as he said, Adam, life has been lost. It will be interesting to hear the damage bill, and unfortunately, as you said, life has been lost, and my thoughts go to the family of that young female motorist that was killed whilst driving down a road. Her car was completely wiped out by a tree, and it's one of those freak accidents. The Irish Coast Guard, they were active on the Twitter platform. I monitored several accounts, and the hash keys Hurricane Ophelia, and I should also send out a special thank you to the local media, a couple of the radio stations in particularly in Ireland that were providing updated information. There are others that escape me at this point in time, and Adam and I and a couple of others that are part of the team, we were spending anywhere up to 12 hours monitoring the life of Ophelia. And Anna, would I be right to say that she's not finished yet?
She is almost getting to the end, but yes, she's not done just yet. Again, she is presently moving through portions of Scotland, and again, with the large expanding wind field, it is also still impacting areas of England as well. There are yellow warnings that are still active for a good chunk of southern Scotland, as well as north and eastern England. Again, there was a whole pile of warnings, an unprecedented event that the whole entire Ireland, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland were under red warnings, portions of Scotland under red warnings, and again, pretty much almost the whole entire United Kingdom under warnings, and situation not great there. Um, And David, as you mentioned, with that female with the car, that was actually the first reported death from Ophelia across the United Kingdom, and again, heart does go out to those families who lost. But this system hasn't gone without its challenges when it comes to emergency management. There was a lot of reports that people were not taking this system seriously, and that there was even reports of people going out and just for spite's sake, or just for a joke, actually go out and swim in the sea, which again, not very smart to do, and it was not great at all. Again, a very difficult situation for the search and rescue teams, the Coast Guard, the RNLI. It's not great, and I'm quite sure they'll be doing plenty of reviews after the system is passed, and probably work on bettering themselves for the next one. I Continuing on, because again we got a few more systems out there to discuss. We do have ourselves Invest Area 92L out here in the southwestern Atlantic, just off of the northwestern Bahamas, and just southeast of Bermuda. This system, not too well organized. Again, there is somewhat of a sharp trough or circulation, elongated, sharp circulation. There is a fair amount of convection blowing up. The chances for this thing to develop into a tropical storm, by the way, if it does, its name would be Felipe. There's still a small chance. It has until Wednesday to become as such before wind shear increases and it starts to interact with a frontal system. However, there is a more deeper concern because this system itself will spin up a secondary low, or at least this is the genesis feature for a much more larger low pressure system, which sadly, looking at the forecast for that, very sadly does take this across to the United Kingdom once again. So this will be a double whammy for the United Kingdom, a second system, and even suggestions of the second system potentially being as strong, maybe even slightly stronger, in terms of its impacts to the UK. And we are looking at a good few days away and things can change. But one thing I will point out is that there is very tight general agreement, consensus with the forecast, where this thing will go. And generally, the United Kingdom is in the targets for this system. Obviously, not discounting out the island of Bermuda, which will also be affected or is starting to be affected and will continue to be affected by this system until it moves out. And then it'll be on its track towards the United Kingdom. So what I would suggest is that Ophelia's passage be a reminder to all that no matter where you are, you still can get caught off guard by these tropical systems. And there's a second one coming, and of course the United Kingdom can redeem itself from issues that it had with Ophelia. Again, not very good for the United Kingdom that they'll be getting another system straight after already being impacted by Ophelia. Besides this, the general tropical Atlantic, this is the satellite of such. And a couple of features wanting to point out here. We have a cold front, a very early season cold front that is draping across the Gulf of Mexico. This cold front is starting to stall out, whilst the northern edge will continue on and start to interact with this low pressure system as we get through Wednesday. There's also a pair of tropical waves that's moving into the Caribbean, another set of tropical waves out here. And besides this, we are going to be needing to keep a close eye on this region over the next few days, as there is general model agreement, consensus that we could be looking at least one, if not two, tropical systems forming in the southwestern Caribbean Sea, which again, there is fairly decent model consensus that whatever does develop in this area will eventually move north and then off towards the northeast. And again, very high ocean heat content, sea surface temperatures in the area, and generally it's expected to be favorable. Also, by that time, the Madden-Julian oscillation or phase will be getting itself into the phases of Eastern Pacific and Western Caribbean, thus enhancing the favorability of developing thunderstorms in the area. So it's something that will need to be monitored very, very closely. Just to point out these models here and just to give you a general idea what we're looking at. Again, here is the latest GFS model, Global Forecast System, American model. And generally what it is showing is that an area of low pressure will form in the southwestern Caribbean and then eventually lift northwards, eventually impacting potentially the areas of the Cayman Islands, then Cuba, and then towards Florida, and then a little later in the run. Also shows that a tail piece of this will break off into the western Caribbean off near Central America, potentially produce a second system which will again move north and eastwards out towards the Cayman region, Cuba, Bahamas. Again, don't concentrate too much at the moment on exactly where. Again, we still do have some time away before we do get this, and again, we won't worry too much on track until we have an actual low pressure system to track, have model runs on them. But again, just showing you the general idea here. So that is from the GFS. The Canadian model also shows a similar situation where it forms a low pressure system down in here, moves generally northwards and then northeastwards as such. Again, common theme seems to be affecting the Cayman region, Cuba, possibly South Florida and the Bahamas. Of course, not discounting out the rainfall threat that would be occurring for areas such as Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, and the Yucatan as well, and even potentially Jamaica, Eastern Cuba, and Turks and Caicos. Again, this time of year, we start to look for systems that do form in the Western Caribbean, and they tend to be big, broad monsoonal systems that tend to have a lot of moisture, large, broad area, and tends to be a big rainfall maker. Again, we had our first system as such as that not too long ago. Remember Hurricane Nate, which also formed down here in the southwestern Caribbean, then moved up northwards, landfalling in portions of Nicaragua and Honduras before lifting off towards north, passing through the Yucatan Channel and making its way towards a landfall in Louisiana and also in Mississippi, causing quite a bit of destruction here in the Western Caribbean, as well as some of the destruction here in the southeast Gulf of Mexico. Um, so, and as you remember with that, that was a fairly large rainfall maker than anything else. So again, that was the CMC. This is the European, which is also showing a sort of similar situation with the low pressure area developing up along here. And again, there's a frontal system sort of, or a weak remnant of a frontal system draped across here. And the general motion is northwards with this. It does run the system a little later than the other models, but generally the consensus is there with such. Also pointing out the NavGem, the Navy model, which also predicts a low pressure area to be in the general area. This is actually run a bit quicker, showing the low pressure developing a lot more sooner. But generally, you get the idea. Low pressure, Western Caribbean, good chance that this thing could potentially develop into a decent storm, and heavy rainfall impacts. Also, going into the more reliable UK Met, which has done fairly okay with a few of the storms this year, pointing out that the setup, it has the low pressure system forming here in the southwestern Caribbean, eventually moving a little bit to the west, a little bit closer to the coast. But as you can see here, we have our high pressure ridge out here. And then we got this very strong troughing, likely another cold front. This will allow the flow to be north and northeastwards, which should drag this eventually north and northeastwards as well. Very similar thing that is showing up on the other models as well. Just to throw out there a couple more, just to give you that idea of the overall general consensus of a tropical system or two developing. Here is the NASA GEOS 5 as well, indicating as such a system, and even suggesting two systems out there as well. Frontal system draped along here, which will drag this system north and east, and then this one should meander a little bit before getting dragged northwards as well, if that second system does happen. Again, plenty of time to watch. We will monitor the situation. The NOAA FIM model, again, also another model that has shown this development as well. As you could see here, low pressure area in the Western Caribbean. And the FIM model, you have several types, call it the FIM suite. And so that is one, and again, another one here, more or less suggesting the same. So it's something that we'll have to monitor very closely over the coming days, and we'll keep you up to date on that situation and whatever that will do, as well as us continuing to cover the Invest Area 92 and the potential impacts to the United Kingdom that will produce. This is European ensembles, and again, generally showing that they're expecting some area of low pressure to develop. Tracks a little bit sketchy at the moment. Again, plenty of time to watch. We got a few days to go. So giving you a general timeline when we could be looking at a system really taking off here in the Western Caribbean based on the data we have from the models. Low pressure areas more or less should generally form sometime in the early to middle part of next week, and then eventually make its way northwards through the weekend time of next week, possibly going into the week after. So again, we got plenty of time. We're just at the start of this new week here, and we got about 7 or more days to go before we start worrying with that. But again, something that needs to be monitored closely, and we will keep you up to date on that situation. Anyway, this is it from us here. David, thank you for the input there with Ophelia. Definitely a situation that it will be for the record books, and we'll continue to provide information as the rest of 2017 Atlantic hurricane season continues.